Loading hot takes in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back into TwinTakes Fantasy Football. Today we're going to be continuing on our discussion from last episode and talking about 10 more would you rather scenarios that you're probably going to be faced with in your upcoming fantasy football draft. Hopefully this will provide you some good information and make your decisions a little bit easier as we get into the height of fantasy draft season tonight and into this weekend, and help you bring home that oh so coveted fantasy championship. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start off with some running backs. That's going to be a pretty critical decision, especially if you're a fan of the ever more popular hero or zero RB draft strategies. And that's going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus AJ Dillon. Both of these guys are in tremendous offenses. Both offenses in Kansas City and Green Bay have been ranked in the top 5 over the past few years. Both are led by basically the top 2 quarterbacks in the NFL right now. But both have been slipping to the 5th or 6th round and are allowing you to scoop up some tremendous value. Don't hear what I'm not saying. Both these guys are great value. We're just talking about which one has more upside to help you win your draft. And for me, that's going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire, just from the standpoint that he was handpicked by Mahomes out of LSU. I understand that his rookie and sophomore season have been a little bit of disappointments, but everything we've seen out of preseason shows him to being the clear number 1 back on this team. And just the fact that we've said ad nauseum here, vacated targets go to the running back. And there's certainly a lot of those with Tyreek Hill, amongst others, leaving that offense. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to have to step up in this offense. And he's going to have a much bigger role than we've seen in the past couple of years and be a real surprise, a good surprise for fantasy managers. AJ Dillon, I think, is going to be good as well. I just think he's really stymied behind Aaron Jones. He's shown tremendous talent, but he won't take that real true RB1 step until Aaron Jones gets out of his way, like we saw a couple times with injury last year. But as far as upside, the guys that can really break open a week for you, Clyde is that guy for me. AJ Dillon will just be a nice, safe, consistent floor in that Packers offense. Let's talk about another Chiefs running back in Isaiah Pacheco. Towards the later end of your drafts, the 14th, 15th round here, you want to take some dart throws, want some guys that can maybe step up towards the latter half of the season and really help you once injuries start to mount on a team. So I'm looking at here Isaiah Pacheco or Tyler Algier. And please don't buy into the hype of Pacheco. That was a really fun week talking about how this really late undrafted rookie is going to come in and supplant and become one of the most dynamic weapons in the powerhouse offense that is Kansas City. That's great and all, but you have to look a little bit and read in between the lines. Pacheco is still running out there in preseason. He's still running with the second team, and as good as he's looked, everything from the way the team is handling Clyde Edwards-Helaire is showing Clyde as the clear number 1 back in that offense. Where the way they've sat him when it comes to the backup reps, the way he's only taken first string reps. So I love the story of Pacheco. He could be an interesting asset down the road, just not this year, while Clyde is still cemented clearly as the number 1 option. Also, as of the time of recording, this is when they're announcing 53-man rosters and final cuts. And Ronald Jones and Jerick McKinnon still look to be part of this offense. So behind Clyde, it's going to be a little bit murky of a backfield with kind of expressed roles from Andy Reid that Jerick McKinnon and Ronald Jones will have. So even if Clyde does go down to injury, which is more than likely if we're being honest, there's still going to be a lot of other mouths to feed in that offense. On the other hand, Tyler Algier, I love what I've seen out of that BYU prospect. He is one of the best pure runners in this class. I'd put him up there, maybe just behind Kenneth Walker when it comes to a pure running aspect. Right now, he's slotted behind Cordero Patterson, but even though Cordero had a great season last year, it was pretty apparent that he couldn't sustain that production, and his 31-year-old body couldn't keep up for the entirety of the NFL season. I don't think, even if he comes out of the gates like on fire, I don't think he'll be able to sustain it. He will break down. That's just the nature of older running backs. And everything I've seen out of Tyler Algier in the preseason shows me that he's going to be able to just eat when he gets on the field and being given those opportunities. Yes, the Falcons are not projected to be an amazing offense, probably bottom 5 in the league if we're being honest with ourselves here. However, the fact that the only 2 really dynamic weapons outside of Algier and Cordero are going to be Kyle Pitts and Drake London means that there's going to be a pretty significant amount of volume coming Algier's way if he ends up getting that running back 1 role. And just in my mind, to break it down, the path to an RB1 role in their respective offenses for Tyler Algier, it's just more palpable for Tyler Algier. So I'm taking the late dart throw on Algier over Pacheco. Moving on, that's enough running backs for now. Let's talk about tight ends. If you're like me, you love punting the tight end position and waiting to pick up one towards the end of the draft or just play it by waiver wire. But let's look at two guys that are going in maybe like the 10th, 9th, 10th round. That's going to be Zach Ertz or Cole Kmet. Both have been shown some love by the fantasy community. Both have been said to be a little bit underrated. I think both guys are going to play critical roles in their offense for different reasons. Cole Kmet, just because there is just a severe lack of offensive weapons on that Bears roster. However, Ertz, while he has a little bit more competition, if we look at the metrics from last year, after he was traded to the Cardinals, he had the top 7 target share of any tight end in any offense in the NFL. And for that reason, I'm going to go with Zach Ertz. While Cole Kmet might take a bigger piece of his respective offense's target share, that total offensive pie as a whole is going to be much smaller than what they're running down there in Phoenix. I think Cliff Kingsbury in the air raid offense is going to be pretty dynamic this year. Despite their late season collapses, we've seen them get better steadily each and every year. We've seen Kyler get better steadily each and every year. We saw him feed Zach Ertz with, again, top 7 target share for a tight end after he was traded to the Cardinals. And even with D-Hop, especially with D-Hop out for the first 6 games due to PEDs, I think Zach Ertz is going to be a really, really great fantasy asset. So if you're stuck between Ertz and Kmet at the end of your draft, I will definitely take Ertz, and then you can back it up with another guy off the waiver wire just in case. Our next Would You Rather scenario, this show is really going to go to the pits and do our first cross position examination here. That's going to be Michael Pittman or Kyle Pitts in the 3rd round. And this is not a knock on either guys because I think they're both wildly talented and have the ability to really break open the game at their respective positions. Kyle Pitts, I'm on record saying that he has the opportunity to revolutionize how the tight end position is going to be played in the future of the NFL. And I posed this question on Twitter the other day. If Kyle Pitts was reclassified to a wide receiver right now, would he still be going in the 3rd round? And that's really what this boils down to. How much of Kyle Pitts' ADP is baked in because of his positional advantage. And I think it's not nothing. I think Kyle Pitts is definitely a talented player, but the tight end position definitely has boosted up his ADP. If he was reclassified, I would put him down to the 4th, maybe the 5th round, throw him in with wide receivers like Brandon Cooks. Very similar offenses, by the way. And I just think that on a week-to-week basis, Michael Pittman has the ability to break open a 2 to 3 touchdown game, 100 yards, have those 30-point weeks that are going to win you a week outright. And when I'm building a team, I want players like that who can really just win you a week outright, and Michael Pittman has the ability to do that. So this is not a knock on Kyle Pitts. This is more of me saying that I would rather prefer a wide receiver over a tight end in the 3rd round, and I'm going to go with Michael Pittman, despite what the ADP says here from Sleeper. Moving on. This is going to be a really interesting conversation. In the 6th round, we have Gabe Davis versus Drake London, 2 wide receivers who are poised for massive breakout years. Both wide receivers are going to get a ton of love from the fantasy community, and deservedly so. Gabe Davis has obviously worked himself up in a top 5 offense in the Buffalo Bills, and Drake London has the draft capital to be a superstar in this league, and we saw what the highest drafted wide receiver can do last year with Jamar Chase and completely just dominate a team and come in and immediately be one of the most dynamic forces in fantasy football. So I'm not going to elaborate I'm not going to elaborate a ton on my thoughts on Gabe Davis. I've documented it well in my video, Sleepers I think should go back to bed. He's obviously going to have to contend with Stephon Diggs. And just purely from an opportunity standpoint, I'm going to go with Drake London here. I think Desmond Ridder, whether the quarterback is Desmond Ridder or Marcus Mariota, they've both demonstrated that they are capable NFL quarterbacks in the preseason. I've liked everything I've seen out of both of them. I think they're slept on just a little bit. This offense, while it's not going to be a top 15 offense by any stretch of the means, it's going to be better than what people give it credit for. And I think Drake London's talent will certainly be able to provide him with a lot of fantasy points. The way he goes and high points the ball, the way he can win down the field. He's obviously 6'5", 230, wins, huge end zone target, breaks tackles, huge yak monster. And I'm all in on the Drake London hype train this year. However, there has been quite a bit of Gabe Davis negativity coming out of this channel, so I'm bringing in a very special guest to give you something else as a kind of a counter take to this Would You Rather question right now.
If you're high on Gabe Davis, you're right. The Bills stepped up their passing game last year, had Josh Allen throwing 74 more passes in 2021 than he did in 2020. This led to a noticeable decrease in catch percentage of every single wide receiver except for Gabriel Davis. If you take out the Week 18 outlier, where he had Mitch Trubisky throwing him the ball, Gabe Davis increased his catch percentage from 56% to 65%. And let's not mention the vacated targets, because I'm not too worried about Jamison Crowder or Khalil Shakir coming in. Jamison Crowder, the last time he had a healthy full season, Todd Gurley was a relevant fantasy asset. And this Bills coaching staff has shown that they do not trust rookie wide receivers in this offense. No, there's not been a single rookie to get more than 30 targets from Josh Allen under this coaching staff. And if that doesn't do it for you, Gabriel Davis is a prototypical alpha wide receiver. He is 6'2", 215. There is no other wide receivers in that locker room that are greater than 6 foot or way more than 190 soaking wet. When you get into the red zone, these are the type of guys you target. Don't take my word for it, though. He had more red zone targets than Devontae Adams did last year, so it seems like Josh Allen agrees with me.
Well, that's all the time we have to talk about Gabe Davis for right now. I hope that appeased you Gabe Davis truthers. Let's move on to our next Would You Rather question. That's going to be one of the biggest talked about questions of this offseason. Who should be the number 1 overall pick? Is it going to be CMC or Jonathan Taylor? I've hinted at who I would pick here before, and I'm going to back that up in Christian McCaffrey. Historically, the number 1 overall running back has failed to repeat that performance, and I think with Matt Ryan coming in, they're going to definitely bump up the passing offense down there, or up there, down there, wherever it respectively is in Indianapolis. We've seen in Atlanta that Matt Ryan doesn't really target the running back for dump-offs, not nearly as much as Carson Wentz did. On the other, conversely, with Christian McCaffrey, we've seen him put up 20-plus point weeks without even scoring a touchdown. I think that he is just truly an offensive weapon that this league has never seen. He's going to be in the running back. He's going to line up in the slot. He's going to be a wide receiver. We've seen Baker Mayfield really utilize running backs before, and I think that Christian McCaffrey's upside is just, the sky is the limit. And if I'm going 101, there's a lot of guys I like at the 2-3 turns, so might as well just shoot for the moon and go Christian McCaffrey. I'm riding in on that risk, baby. I can go and talk about CMC versus Jonathan Taylor for hours and hours here, but yeah, let's leave it there. Christian McCaffrey, higher upside, even in a more putrid offense. Let's go on to wide receivers that, again, these are going to be guys that like wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 in your team, but you're shooting for guys that the ADP doesn't adequately represent their talents. And these are 2 guys that have dealt with pretty significant injuries over the past year, and that's why you're going to find them here in the 5th or 6th round. That's Chris Godwin and Michael Thomas. Both are in the AFC South. Both have been wide receiver 1s before, been in the top 12 of fantasy. And for Michael Thomas, he has been the wide receiver 1 on a year. A few years ago, Chris Godwin has been a top 5 wide receiver, but just injuries have completely derailed what they've been able to do in recent years. If I'm looking at these 2 guys, I'm probably going to go Drake London and Gabe Davis over both of these guys, but let's just say that both those guys are gone, or you prefer guys that you're a little bit more risk averse. You don't want to predict a breakout. You want to go with guys who have done it. And for me, it's going to be Chris Godwin. Tom Brady's the GOAT, as much as that pains me to say that. And I think he's really going to be, he's a much better quarterback than Jameis. Michael Thomas, he is great. I don't think slant boy, for the negative connotation that it's been used in. Yes, he's not truly the slant god and can only catch slants, but it is kind of true. All rumors are based in truth, and Drew Brees did pepper him with a ton of short targets. So I don't think Jameis is going to do that. Jameis loves to scramble. Jameis loves to throw that deep ball. And I just don't think the volume is going to be there for Michael Thomas that we've seen in previous years. Also with Chris Olave being drafted by this regime with the 11th overall pick. I'm assuming that the new offensive staff there is going to try to involve him and get him up to speed as soon as possible. With the way that the wide receiver market's going, it's don't hold out and try to build your wide receivers. Let's get them incorporated now. So I think not only with the change of quarterback, the change of regime, but also by drafting that really high wide receiver draft capital has soured me on Michael Thomas. And I haven't really taken him in any drafts this year, underdog, best ball, any sort of redraft whatsoever. And Chris Godwin, while Yes, the injury does scare me. It is what we call a repeat injury, and one that is likely to hamper his ability and production down the road. I definitely have a lot more faith in the Bucs offense being led by Tom Brady. Let's talk about quarterbacks again. It's been a minute. And obviously, a lot of people, the way they draft, the top 4 guys, that's just way too rich for you to invest at QB. So let's talk about some of those sleeper guys in the middle rounds after you've built up your core wide receiver and running backs you might want to target. And that's going to be 2 guys going back to back as it currently stands in the 6th and 7th spot. And that's going to be Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts. And this take will be, obviously their ADPs will differ a little bit in 4-point and 6-point leagues, but I think overall, this take that I'm going to describe here can be applied to both types of scoring formats. And in both, I'm going to take Jalen Hurts. Obviously, he has that rushing upside, but conversely, with Joe Burrow, I just see a lot of the Bengals starters. Their ADP and their value has been artificially inflated through their run to the Super Bowl last year. I don't think it's going to be repeatable, even with the investment they put in the offensive line. I think that entire offense as a whole steps back as Zach Taylor tries to build an offense that's more sustainable, an offense that's more consistent, built around the running game, involving some more options and also bolstering the defense so they don't have to get in these massive, offensive battles and winning games 34 to 30 points. So overall, the decrease in offensive points scored is going to decrease the fantasy points output by their players. And I just don't see Joe Burrow really repeating what he did last year. And with Jalen Hurts, I see the trajectory for him to be even better, as I don't with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, we saw him throw 500 yards and 5 TDs like twice last year against the Kansas City Chiefs and Baltimore Ravens. That's the peak. I don't see Joe Burrow being better than that. So we've seen the maximum of what Joe Burrow is, and Joe Burrow is being drafted because we've seen his absolute peak. Jalen Hurts, going back to even his time at Alabama, he has gotten better as a passer every single year according to PFF passing grades. And now with A.J. Brown in the fold, I think he's going to truly unleash his ability as a passer and as a rusher. I see that whole offense taking a leap as a whole, and I think Jalen Hurts is not being drafted at his quote-unquote peak. So that's how I view those 2 quarterbacks, and I'll be taking Jalen Hurts 10 times out of 10 over Joe Burrow, despite how cool I think Joe Burrow is. Couple more here for you guys. Let's talk about some same team questions. Kenneth Walker or Rashaad Penny. Obviously, you can never be too deep at running back. And Pete Carroll, he loves to establish the run. And we know how valuable that Seattle running backs have been for fantasy in the past. So which one is going to be the one that you want to pick up on your team? They're basically going back to back in drafts right now. And both of them have injury concerns. Rashaad Penny had a hamstring and a groin injury this preseason. Kenneth Walker had a hernia surgery. So it's 50-50 right now. Who's going to be the more fantasy relevant asset? And I'm going to pick Kenneth Walker here. Now stay with me. The first couple games of the season, you're going to be upset. Rashaad Penny is going to come in. He's going to do well. But there's 3 things in life that are certain. That's death, taxes, and Rashaad Penny getting injured. Kenneth Walker, he's already come out and said this hernia was not a big deal. He's on track to be ready by week 1 and at full strength shortly thereafter. I think once we get the ball, I don't think Pete Carroll is not going to be, jumping at the opportunity to get Kenneth Walker the RB1 spot. But as soon as Kenneth Walker shows that he is the RB1 and can take those duties over when Rashaad Penny's not on the field, then absolutely he will supplant Rashaad Penny. And in the more critical aspect of the season, which is going to be week 8 and beyond, leading up to the fantasy playoffs and the fantasy playoffs themselves, Kenneth Walker will be a much, much, much more valuable fantasy asset. And especially at this later ADP, hopefully you've already built up some really good running back depth and core, so you don't have to worry about Kenneth Walker being in your starting lineup from the get-go. You can sit him on his bench, and as he progresses and kind of breaks out towards the end of the season, a la Michael Carter last year, that's where I see his true value. And finally, let's go back one more time to the wide receivers. We know how crucial it is to nail those first 4 picks. This is going to be A.J. Brown versus Tyreek Hill. And I'm actually loving this right now because these two just played a preseason game against each other. And Tyreek Hill's draft price went way up after that bomb throw from Tua to start the game. And I'm fine with that. Let someone else take that landmine. I haven't been shy about how I'm fading Tyreek, and that throw doesn't change my mind, because if you watch closely, it was basically a 50-yard hook route. Tyreek had to come back and basically curl around and catch that ball from Tua. Tua does not have the arm strength to sustain the production that Tyreek Hill is used to, and the Eagles did not play a single one of their starters in that game, and a starting caliber DB from the Eagles will not let that throw happen in real life. I guarantee it. So let Tyreek rise up the draft board. Let someone else take him. Yes, it's gonna feel bad when he gets 40 points on a week, and he will win people a couple weeks outright, but there'll be a lot more weeks that he does just completely submarine them, doesn't even get the double-digit points, and you're left with this vacant hole in your chest after you lose a week with Tyreek Hill. A.J. Brown, on the other hand, we've seen him. He's been a very steady producer. He's never had any questions about his volatility, unlike Tyreek Hill in the past. He's coming into an offense. Yes, he might be new. Both of these guys are new. I forgot to mention at the beginning. I'm talking about these because they're both transplants to new offenses. And while I think, going back to Tyreek, the transplantation to this offense is going to be a downgrade because it's going to be kind of a regression back to his volatility and consistency. This is actually an upgrade for A.J. Brown. He has a connection already with Jalen Hurts. Apparently they did Christmases at each other's houses before. They practice with each other in the offseason. They already have kind of that rapport built. Everything I've seen out of training camp, even though it hasn't been on display in preseason, there's been some crazy catches. I think the Eagles have put a lot in place around Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown for them to be successful. So every time I get A.J. Brown at the end of the third round after someone's taken Tyreek, I am jumping for joy, and you should too. So that brings us to the end of our fantasy Would You Rathers. Hopefully, just like last time, giving you some confidence to go one way or another when you're stuck in the middle of a draft pick and the clock's ticking down and you start feeling that sweat beat up on your brow. Or maybe it just gave you some confidence in a pick you already made earlier. Either way, hopefully these help you bring home that fantasy championship. We can certainly circle back around and see how right or wrong I was a little bit later on down the road, and I promise I will hold myself accountable. But this also is going to wrap up kind of the preseason analysis when it comes to fantasy football. I've had a ton of fun doing this, but now it's time to get into the actual season content. So uploads will change a little bit. Thinking that waiver wire and week analysis is going to come out on Tuesday. I'll have a surprise coming out for you guys for recaps on Friday, and then we'll see what other content I can come up with in post. It's going to be a little bit in flux. We'll figure it out on the go. This is my first season doing this, but very excited to make the transition into in-season content, and looking forward to a wonderful fantasy football season with you guys.